The cold left his body slowly, like ice melting under a weak sun. Quan's fingers twitched first, then his toes. His eyes refused to open for several long minutes. When they finally did, he saw metal ceiling panels covered in strange symbols that glowed with a soft blue light. His mouth was dry. His head hurt. Every muscle in his body felt stiff and wrong. Where was he? Quan tried to remember. He had been working on the colony ship Horizon. There had been an accident in the engine room. Explosions. Fire. People screaming. The captain had ordered everyone into the cryopods. Emergency protocol. They would sleep until rescue came. But this wasn't the Horizon. The room around him was too large. The walls curved in ways that made no sense. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet he couldn't identify. The cryopod he was lying in looked nothing like the standard Earth models. It was made of a dark material that seemed to shift colors when he moved his head. Quan sat up slowly. His body protested every movement. The pod opened with a hiss, and warm air rushed over his face. He looked around the chamber. There were dozens of other pods arranged in rows, but most of them were dark and empty. Only his pod showed signs of power. "You're awake, finally." Quan jumped at the voice. A woman stood near the doorway. She was human, wearing a torn gray jumpsuit that had seen better days. Her black hair was cut short and uneven, like she had done it herself with a dull blade. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "Who are you?" Quan asked. His voice came out rough and broken. "My name is Hana. I was a linguist on the research vessel Brightness." "What year do you remember?" "Year? It's 2431. May, I think." We had just left Mars orbit when Quan stopped. Something in Hana's expression made his stomach drop. "What year is it now?" 2847, Hana said quietly. "You've been frozen for 416 years. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Quan stared at her, waiting for the joke to end. But Hana's face remained serious. "That's not possible," Quan said. "I thought the same thing 3 days ago when I woke up." Hana walked closer. "But it's true. Come on. I'll show you." Quan's legs were weak, but he managed to stand. He followed Hana out of the cryo chamber and into a long corridor. The hallway was massive, easily 20 feet tall. The walls were made of the same strange material as the pod, smooth and dark with veins of light running through them like glowing rivers. "Where are we?" Quan asked. "On an alien ship called Valkyris. At least, that's what the computers call it. The ship found our colony vessels drifting in space. Both ships were badly damaged. The aliens brought aboard anyone they could save in cryopods. They tried to wake us up many times over the centuries, but the process kept failing. You and I are the first ones to survive." They passed through several more corridors. Some sections were dark, lit only by emergency lights. Other sections flickered with power surges. Quan noticed scorch marks on some walls and signs of repairs that looked crude and desperate. "Where are the aliens?" he asked. Hana stopped walking. She turned to face him. "Dead. All of them. The last one died about 60 years ago, according to the ship's logs." "How?" "Their main engine was failing. It leaked radiation slowly over centuries. They couldn't fix it. They couldn't stop it. One by one, they died." Hana's voice was flat, like she had told this story to herself many times. The last few kept the ship running as long as they could. They left detailed logs. I think they hoped someone would wake up eventually and be able to help. Quan felt cold again, despite the warm air. "How many humans are still in cryo?" "3 others. I've checked their pods. They're stable, but I don't know how to wake them safely. I was hoping you might know more about the systems." "I'm a mechanic, not a doctor," Better than nothing. Hannah led him to what looked like a command center. The room was circular, with multiple stations arranged around a central display. The display showed the ship from the outside, a massive vessel shaped like a curved blade with sections that seemed to grow organically rather than being built. "This is the bridge," Hannah said. "Most of the controls don't work anymore. The ship is running on automatic systems, but those are failing too. Life support is at 40% and dropping. Gravity generators keep cutting out. And we're still moving through space towards something the aliens called the Silent Maw." Quan studied the displays. Even though the symbols were alien, some of the readouts made sense to him. Power distribution, pressure systems, temperature controls, the basics were universal, even across species. "What's the Silent Maw?" he asked. "I don't know. Some kind of stellar anomaly. The logs suggest the aliens were heading there on purpose, like they thought it could help them. But the logs stopped before they reached it. We're still 8 months away at current speed." Quan sat down at one of the stations. His mind was racing. 400 years. Everyone he knew was dead. Earth had probably changed in ways he couldn't imagine. And now he was trapped on a dying alien ship with a stranger, heading toward an unknown destination in deep space. It should have terrified him. Maybe it would, later. Right now, he felt something else. Curiosity. "Show me the engineering sections," Quan said. Hannah looked surprised. "You want to see the engines? If this ship is dying, maybe we can fix it." The aliens couldn't fix it for 600 years. "What makes you think we can?" Quan stood up and smiled. It was a tired, bitter smile. "Because I'm not trying to understand it. I'm just trying to make it work." They spent the next several hours exploring the lower decks. The engineering sections were massive, filled with machines that seemed to be half mechanical and half organic. Tubes pulsed with fluids. Crystal arrays hummed with energy. The main drive core was a sphere of twisted, metal and glowing material that hurt to look at directly. Quan examined everything carefully. He took notes on a datapad Hannah had found. He sketched diagrams. He touched surfaces and listened to sounds. Around him, the ship groaned and creaked like a living thing in pain. The more he saw, the more he understood something important. The aliens had been trying to fix the drive by understanding how it worked on a theoretical level. They had run calculations and simulations. They had built new components based on their best guesses, but they had never tried the simple approach. Bypass the broken parts and reroute around them. As they headed back toward the cryo chambers, Quan felt a small spark of hope. The ship was in bad shape. The technology was beyond anything humanity had created when he went to sleep. The task was impossible, but impossible had never stopped a good mechanic before. "We need to wake the others," Quan said. "If we're going to survive this, we'll need help." Hannah nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that." They stood together in the alien corridor, two humans alone in the darkness of space, surrounded by the ghost of a dead civilization. Outside the ship, stars blazed in the endless night. Inside, the lights flickered but held steady. There was work to do. 3 weeks had passed since Quan woke up. He had spent every waking hour in the engineering sections of the ship, studying the alien systems. His hands were covered in cuts and burns. His clothes were stained with strange fluids that glowed faintly in the dark. He barely slept, but he was making progress. Hannah worked in the data core, a room filled with crystalline structures that stored the ship's information. She had learned to read some of the alien language through pattern recognition and the ship's translation protocols. Every day, she discovered more about the Voltash, the species who had built this vessel. They had been proud. That much was clear from the logs. The Voltash believed they were the smartest beings in their region of space. They had conquered their home system and expanded to 12 colony worlds. Their technology was advanced. Their society was ordered and efficient. Then they found the ship. The Valkyris wasn't built by the Voltash. They had discovered it drifting near a dead star, abandoned by an even older civilization. The ship's quantum fold drive could move faster than light, crossing distances that would take normal ships centuries. The Voltash claimed the ship as their own and spent decades learning to operate it, but they never fully understood how the drive worked. 600 years ago, the drive began to fail. The Voltash engineers studied the problem. They ran thousands of simulations. They built elaborate theories about quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. They tried to repair the drive using their best understanding of the principles involved. Every attempt made things worse. The drive core became unstable. Radiation leaked into the ship. The Voltash started dying, slowly at first, then faster. They kept working on the problem even as their numbers dwindled. The last survivors documented everything, hoping their research would help someone in the future. Hannah read these logs to Quan each evening. They sat in what had been the crew's common area, eating preserved rations from the ship's stores. The food was bland but edible, designed to last for centuries. They were so focused on understanding the why that they forgot about the how. Quan said after hearing about another failed repair attempt. They wanted to know why the drive worked instead of just figuring out how to make it work again. What's the difference? Hannah asked. Everything. Quan leaned back against the wall. If your water heater breaks, you don't need to understand thermodynamics. You just need to know which part failed and how to replace it. The Voltash were trying to reinvent the entire theory of the drive instead of just fixing the broken pieces. But they didn't know which pieces were broken. Neither do I, but I'm not trying to fix it the way they wanted it to work. I'm trying to fix it in a way that will work. Hannah didn't fully understand, but she trusted Quan. Over the past 3 weeks, he had stabilized several of the ship's secondary systems. The gravity generators no longer cut out randomly. The air recyclers ran more smoothly. Small victories, but they made life aboard the ship more bearable. Still, the main drive remained a problem. Every scan showed it getting worse. The radiation levels were rising. At the current rate, the ship would become uninhabitable in less than a year. We need more help, Hannah said. We should wake the others. Quan had been thinking the same thing. There were 3 more humans in the cryo chambers. Hannah had identified them from the pod records. Jihoon, a xenobiologist who studied alien life forms. Nari, an astrophysicist who specialized in stellar navigation. Daehan, a security officer from a colony defense force. Do you know how to wake them safely? Quan asked. I've been studying the Voltash medical logs. I think so. The key is doing it slowly, letting their bodies adjust to the temperature change gradually. You and I survived because the pods malfunctioned and woke us up slower than intended. Then let's do it. We'll start tomorrow. That night, Quan couldn't sleep. He lay in the small quarters he had claimed, staring at the ceiling. The ship hummed around him, a constant reminder that he was inside something alive and dying. He thought about Earth, about his family. His younger sister had been 12 when he left. She would have lived her entire life and died of old age while he slept. Everyone he loved was gone. That thought sat heavy in his chest, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. There was work to do. People to save. A ship to repair. Quan got up and walked back to the engineering section. He worked through the night, taking measurements and making notes. By the time Hannah found him the next morning, he had sketched out a rough plan. What's this? She asked, looking at the diagram spread across the floor. A solution. Maybe. I need to test it. Quan pointed to the drive core. The quantum fold system is too complex and too damaged to repair properly. But we don't need it to fold space. We just need power. I think I can convert the core into a massive fusion reactor. Will that work? It should. The core already uses fusion as part of its quantum process. I'm just going to bypass all the quantum parts and let it run as a straight fusion system. It won't be anywhere near as powerful as the original drive, but it will give us stable energy for decades. Hannah studied the diagrams. Even with her limited engineering knowledge, she could see the elegance of the idea. The Voltash never considered this? Why would they? To them, it would be like turning a starship into a bicycle. They'd see it as barbaric, wasteful, a failure. Quan smiled. But a bicycle that works is better than a starship that doesn't. They spent the morning preparing the first cryopod for awakening. Ji-hoon's pod was in the best condition. Hana carefully adjusted the temperature controls, raising them 1 degree every hour. Quan monitored the life signs. The process was slow and tense. 14 hours later, Ji-hoon opened his eyes. The xenobiologist was confused and frightened at first, just as Quan had been. Hannah explained everything while Quan helped him out of the pod. Ji-hoon was 42 years old with gray streaks in his black hair. He moved slowly, his body stiff from centuries of frozen sleep. Aliens, Ji-hoon said when he saw the ship around him. We're really on an alien ship. Yes, Hana said. And they're all dead? Yes. Ji-hoon processed this information. Then he smiled. Can I see the bodies? I need to see them. This is an incredible opportunity for research. Quan laughed despite himself. Only a scientist would be excited in a moment like this. Over the next week, they woke Nari and Dae-yun. Nari was a small woman with sharp eyes who immediately wanted to access the navigation systems. Dae-han was built like a soldier, thick with muscle, and his first action was to explore the ship's security and weapon systems. With 5 humans awake, the ship felt less empty. They divided responsibilities. Ji-hoon explored the biological components of the ship, discovering that the Voltash had integrated living tissue into many systems. Nari worked on calculating their position and trajectory. Dae-han inventoried supplies and established security protocols. Quan continued working on the drive core, now with help. Ji-hoon's knowledge of biological systems proved useful for understanding the organic components. Nari's physics background helped refine the fusion conversion calculations, but they all knew the truth. Time was running out. The ship was dying faster now. Systems failed daily. The radiation from the core was spreading. Quan stood before the drive core one evening, staring at the glowing sphere. The solution was clear in his mind. He knew what needed to be done. He just didn't know if any of them would survive doing it. The 5 humans gathered in the common area for their first real meeting. 3 weeks had passed since Ji-hoon, Nari, and Dae-yun had awakened. They were all recovered now. Their bodies adjusted to being alive again after centuries of frozen sleep. Dae-hyun spread a map of the ship across the table. He had spent days exploring every corridor and chamber. The ship is bigger than we thought. 20 decks. Most of them are empty now. The Voltash numbered around 300 when they first took this ship. By the end, there were only 4 left. Where are their bodies? Ji-hoon asked. Deck 14. They have a burial chamber. The last survivors placed the dead there in some kind of preservation pods. Dae-hyun looked at Ji-hoon. I didn't touch anything. Figured you'd want to see it yourself. Ji-hoon nodded eagerly. His fascination with the alien species had only grown. He spent hours studying their technology, their designs, their way of thinking. The biological integration in this ship is remarkable. The Voltash use living organisms as part of their computer systems. The data cores aren't just machines. They're alive, in a way. Can we use that? Quan asked. Maybe. The organisms are dying along with the ship, but some are still functional. If we can keep them alive, they might help with repairs. Nari pulled up a star chart on her datapad. We need to talk about where we're going. I've calculated our position. We're in deep space, far from any charted systems. The ship is traveling at 0.3 light speed toward this. She pointed to a dark region on the map. The Silent Maw. It's a stellar anomaly. A collapsed star cluster that's creating unusual gravitational effects. What did the Voltesh want there? Hannah asked. According to their logs, they believe something at the anomaly could repair their drive. Ancient technology, maybe left by the civilization that originally built this ship, but they never reached it to find out. How long until we arrive? Quan asked. 7 months and 3 days at current speed. The group fell silent. 7 months. It sounded like a long time, but Quan knew it wasn't. Not for the work they needed to do. Life support won't last that long, he said. The air recyclers are failing. We have maybe 4 months before the atmosphere becomes toxic. What about the drive core? Dahan asked. Quan stood and walked to the wall display. He pulled up his diagrams. I have a plan. We convert the quantum full drive into a fusion reactor. It won't let us travel faster than light anymore, but it will give us stable power for years. Enough to keep life support running, maintain the shields, power all essential systems. And the catch? Nari asked. She was smart enough to know there was always a catch. The conversion requires manual work inside the drive chamber during the restart process. Someone has to go in there while the core is active. That's suicide, Dahan said flatly. The radiation will kill anyone in minutes. I know. That's why we need to build better protection. Quan looked at Jihoon. You said some of the ship's organisms can absorb radiation? Yes, there's a fungal growth in the lower decks. It feeds on the radiation leaking from the core. But I don't know if we can weaponize it or use it for protection. Figure it out. We need every advantage we can get. Over the following weeks, the team worked together with new purpose. Dahan proved invaluable for organizing their efforts. He created schedules, managed supplies, and made sure everyone rested and ate properly. His military training showed in the way he approached problems with discipline and structure. Jihoon spent his time in the lower decks, studying the fungal organisms. He collected samples and ran experiments in the Voltesh medical lab. The fungus was strange, unlike anything from Earth. It grew in complex patterns and seemed to communicate through chemical signals. When exposed to radiation, it glowed softly and grew faster. It's beautiful, Jihoon said one day, showing Quan a petri dish filled with the glowing fungus. The Voltesh might have engineered it themselves, or it might be native to the ship from the original builders. Either way, it's adapted to survive in high radiation environments. Can it protect a person? I think so. If we can grow enough of it and integrate it into a protective suit, it should absorb a significant amount of radiation. Not all of it, but enough to buy time. Nari worked on understanding the ship's navigation systems. She discovered that the Valkyries had traveled to dozens of star systems over the centuries. The Voltesh had been explorers once, before the drive failed. She found records of planets, of alien ruins, of discoveries that humanity had never imagined. There's so much out here, she said to Hannah one evening. They were studying the star charts together. So many worlds. So many mysteries. Humanity doesn't know any of this exists. Maybe we can tell them, Hannah said. If we survive, that's a big if. It usually is. Hannah continued her work translating the Voltesh logs. She had become fluent in their written language now. She read through personal journals, technical manuals, and cultural records. The Voltesh had been people, not so different from humans in many ways. They had families. They told jokes. They argued about politics and art. They'd also been stubborn. Time and again, Hana found entries where the Voltesh refused to consider simple solutions because they seemed beneath them. They were convinced that only a perfect theoretical understanding would solve their problems. It had killed them. One day, Daehan found the ship's armory. It was located on Deck 9, behind a locked door that took him hours to bypass. Inside were weapons unlike anything he had seen before. Energy rifles that hummed with power. Blade weapons that vibrated at high frequencies. Armor made of the same adaptive material as the ship's hull. Why did they need weapons? He asked Quan. The logs mention encounters with hostile entities. Other species, maybe. Or something else. Space isn't empty. There are dangers out here we don't know about. Daehan tested the weapons carefully. Most still worked. He showed the others how to use them, just in case. We should be prepared for anything. As the months passed, the crew fell into a rhythm. They worked during the day and gathered for meals in the evening. They talked about their old lives, about Earth, about the future. They shared stories and memories, keeping the past alive through words. Quan found himself growing close to the others. They were strangers who had become family through necessity. Jihoon's endless curiosity. Nari's quiet brilliance. Daehan's steady reliability. Hana's gentle wisdom. These people were all he had now. The drive core continued to deteriorate. Warning alarms sounded more frequently. The radiation levels climbed higher. Everyone knew they were running out of time. Quan worked longer hours, pushing himself to exhaustion. He refined his plan, ran simulations, double-checked every calculation. The conversion could work. He was sure of it. But the manual recalibration remained a problem. Someone would have to enter the drive chamber. Someone would have to work in that lethal environment while the core restarted. The radiation would be intense. Even with the best protection they could build, the person might not survive. Late one night, Quan stood alone in the engineering bay, staring at the drive core. The glowing sphere pulsed like a dying heart. He thought about his sister, about his parents, about everyone he had lost to time. He had survived 400 years of frozen sleep only to wake up on a dying ship. It seemed cruel, unfair, but life had never been fair. And Quan had never been one to give up. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Hana walked into the bay, carrying 2 cups of the terrible synthetic coffee they had found in the stores. "Can't sleep?" she asked, handing him a cup. Too much to think about. They stood together in silence, watching the core pulse. Outside the ship, the stars moved slowly past. They were falling through space toward the unknown. 5 humans alone in the darkness. "We're going to make it," Hana said quietly. "We have to." Quan nodded. He didn't know if he believed her, but he wanted to. And sometimes wanting was enough. 5 months had passed since Quan first woke up on the alien ship. The situation had grown worse. Life support was failing faster than predicted. The air had a metallic taste now, and everyone struggled to breathe deeply. The temperature fluctuated wildly between hot and cold. Power outages happened daily. They were running out of time. Quan stood in the engineering bay, making final adjustments to his plan. The conversion was ready. He had spent months preparing, checking every connection, planning every step. The quantum fold drive would become a fusion reactor. It would save them, but someone still needed to enter the drive chamber. The team gathered for a meeting. Everyone looked tired. Jihoon had dark circles under his eyes from long nights, working on the radiation-absorbing fungus. Nari's hand shook slightly from stress and exhaustion. Daehan had lost weight, his face gaunt from skipped meals and constant work. Hana's voice was hoarse from breathing the bad air. They were all dying slowly. The ship was killing them. "We have to do this now," Quan said. We can't wait any longer. I finalized the procedure. The conversion will take approximately 6 hours once we start. Someone needs to be inside the chamber for the critical recalibration phase. That phase lasts about 40 minutes. 40 minutes in a lethal radiation field, Daeun said. What are the survival chances? Kwon hesitated. Then he decided on honesty. Without protection, 0. With the best suit we can build, maybe 30%. Those are rough estimates. I'll do it, Daeun said immediately. I've had radiation training. Military protocols. No, Kwon said. It has to be me. I'm the only one who understands the recalibration procedure fully. If something goes wrong, I need to be able to adapt on the spot. No one else can do that. Then we make sure nothing goes wrong, Hana said. We have time to prepare. Let's use it. The next week was intense. Ji-hoon worked around the clock to cultivate the radiation-absorbing fungus. He had discovered that certain wavelengths of light made it grow faster and stronger. He set up growth chambers in the medical bay, filling them with the glowing organism. The fungus was beautiful in a strange way. It grew in patterns that looked almost like art, spiraling fractals of green and gold. When touched, it felt warm and slightly damp. Ji-hoon talked to it sometimes, explaining what they needed. The others thought he was going crazy, but Kwon understood. When you were alone in space, you talked to whatever would listen. Daehyun found a Voltash environmental suit in storage. It was designed for their taller, thinner bodies, but with modifications, it could fit a human. He spent days reinforcing it, adding extra layers of shielding material stripped from non-essential parts of the ship. NAR. I calculated the exact power flows and radiation patterns during the conversion process. She mapped out the safe zones and danger zones inside the chamber. Her calculations showed that the center of the chamber would be the worst spot, with radiation levels high enough to kill in seconds. That was exactly where Kwon would need to work. Hana continued translating Voltash records, looking for anything that might help. She found accounts of the Voltash engineers who had tried similar repairs. They had all failed. Most had died in the attempt. The ones who survived suffered from radiation poisoning for the rest of their short lives. The logs were not encouraging. 3 days before the conversion, Ji-hoon had cultivated enough fungus. The team carefully harvested it and integrated it into the environmental suit's lining. The suit became a patchwork of gray metal, white radiation shielding, and patches of glowing green fungus. It looks ridiculous, Kwon said when he tried it on. It looks like survival, Ji-hoon replied. The fungus will absorb radiation when it has limits. It will start to die after about an hour of heavy exposure. You need to finish before that happens. 40 minutes. I'll be out in 40 minutes. Good, because after an hour, the suit will stop protecting you entirely. They ran practice drills. Kwon practiced the recalibration procedure on mock-ups built from spare parts. His hands needed to be fast and precise. One mistake could cause a cascade failure that would destroy the ship. He practiced until his movements became automatic, until he could do the procedure blind. The night before the conversion, no one slept much. They sat together in the common area, talking quietly. Daehyun told stories about his time in the colony defense forces. Nari shared memories of her family on Mars. Ji-hoon talked about the alien plants he had studied on distant worlds. Hana recited poetry in Korean, verses about hope and survival. Kwon listened to all of them. These people had become his world. If he died tomorrow, he wanted his last memories to be of their voices, their laughter, their humanity in the face of impossible odds. I'm going to get us through this, he said. I promise. We know, Hana said. She squeezed his hand. We trust you. The next morning, they began. Daehyun helped Kwon into the environmental suit. The fungus patches felt warm against his skin. The suit was heavy, restricting his movement, but he could work in it. He had to. The team took their positions. Ji-hoon in the medical bay, ready to treat radiation exposure. Nari at the monitoring station, tracking power flows. Dayan at the backup controls, ready to abort if needed. Hannah with Kwon at the drive chamber entrance. "Remember," Nari said through the communication system, "the radiation peaks at the 20-minute mark. That's when the conversion is most unstable. Get out if you need to. We can try again." "No," Kwon said. "We only get one shot at this. The ship won't last long enough for a second attempt." He looked at Hannah through the suit's helmet. She looked scared, but she smiled at him. "See you in 40 minutes, she said. 40 minutes, he agreed. The drive chamber door opened. Kwon stepped inside. The chamber was spherical, about 50 feet in diameter. The drive core hung in the center, suspended by energy fields. It pulsed with light, growing brighter and dimmer in an irregular rhythm. The walls were covered in conduits and control panels. Kwon moved to the first control panel and began the startup sequence. His hands moved quickly, pressing buttons and adjusting settings. The core's pulse quickened. Energy readings spiked. "Starting conversion," he said. "Beginning phase 1. Over the next 20 minutes, Kwon worked his way around the chamber. He rerouted power conduits, bypassed quantum regulators, and activated new connection pathways. The core began to change. The irregular pulse became steadier. The light shifted from blue to orange. The radiation levels climbed higher. Kwon felt the heat even through the suit. His body began to ache. The fungus patches glowed brighter as they absorbed the radiation. Sweat ran down his face. 20 minutes, Nari's voice said in his helmet. "Radiation at peak levels. How are you doing?" "Still alive," Kwon said. His voice sounded strained even to himself. "Halfway done." He moved to the center of the chamber, directly below the core. This was the most dangerous part. He needed to physically adjust the core's magnetic containment field. The manual controls were right above his head, inches from the core itself. Kwon reached up. His hand shook. He grabbed the control mechanism and began to turn it. The core's light intensified. The heat became unbearable. His suit's alarm screamed warnings. The fungus was dying. He could feel it. The patches were turning brown, losing their glow. His protection was failing. 35 minutes, Nari said. "Kwon, your readings are critical. Get out now." "Almost done," he said through clenched teeth. "Just a few more adjustments." His vision blurred. His hands moved on instinct now, following the patterns he had practiced 1,000 times. "Turn this. Lock that. Reroute this conduit. Activate this system." The core pulsed one final time, brighter than ever. Then it settled into a steady, even glow. The orange light filled the chamber. "Conversion complete," Kwon said. His legs gave out. He fell to his knees. "It's done. Get out of there." Hannah's voice shouted. "Kwon, move." He tried to stand. His body refused to cooperate. The radiation had damaged more than he thought. He crawled toward the door, each movement an agony. The door opened. Hands grabbed him, pulling him out of the chamber. Dayan and Had dragged him into the corridor. Ji-hoon was there with medical equipment, scanning him frantically. "Radiation exposure is severe," Ji-hoon said. "But not fatal." The fungus worked. It bought him enough time. Kwon lay on the floor, breathing hard. Through the open chamber door, he could see the drive core. It glowed steady and bright, like a small sun. Beautiful. Stable. Perfect. He started to laugh. He couldn't help it. They had done it. Against all odds, with improvised materials and desperate plans, They had converted an alien quantum drive into a working fusion reactor. The ship hummed around them. The lights brightened. The air system kicked into higher gear, beginning to clear the toxins. Power flowed through the ship like blood through veins. They had saved themselves. Hana knelt beside Quan, tears running down her face. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." "We did it," Quan corrected. He looked at each of them. "All of us." Ji-hoon began treating him immediately. The radiation had damaged his cells, but not beyond repair. With the Voltash medical technology in time, he would recover. As they carried him to the medical bay, Quan looked at the ship around him with new eyes. It wasn't dying anymore. It was alive again in a different way than before. Not as sophisticated as it once was. Not as powerful, but it worked. And sometimes that was all that mattered. Quan spent 2 weeks in the medical bay recovering from radiation exposure. His body hurt in ways he didn't know were possible. Every cell felt damaged and wrong. But Ji-hoon was a good doctor, and the Voltash medical technology was remarkably effective. Slowly, Quan healed. During his recovery, the others kept the ship running. They managed daily operations. Nari plotted new navigation courses. Hana continued studying the Voltash records. Ji-hoon split his time between treating Quan and exploring the ship's biological systems. The fusion reactor worked perfectly. Power flowed steady and strong through all systems. Life support stabilized. The air cleared. Temperature controls worked properly again. The ship was alive in a new way, powered by human ingenuity rather than alien genius. On the 15th day, Quan left the medical bay. He was weak and thin, but he could walk. Hana met him in the corridor, supporting him as they walked to the common area. The others were waiting there. "Welcome back," Daehin said. "We saved you some of the terrible synthetic coffee." Quan laughed. "It hurt, but it felt good." "Thanks." "I think." They sat together, and Nari pulled up the navigation displays. "We need to make some decisions. The reactor has given us power, but we're still traveling at 0.3 light speed toward the Silent Maw. We'll arrive there in 3 weeks. What do we know about it?" Quan asked. "Not much. The Voltash believed ancient technology existed there. Something that could help them. But their logs don't say what kind of technology or why they believed it. Do we want to find out?" Ji-hoon asked. "Or should we change course?" The group fell silent. It was a good question. The Silent Maw might hold treasures or dangers. They had no way to know. Where would we go if we changed course? Hana asked. "NAR, I manipulated the star charts. The nearest known human space is 70 years away at our current speed. We have the power to keep life support running that long. We could make it home eventually. 70 years. The number hung in the air. They would all be old if they survived the journey. Ancient by the time they reached human space. And that assumed nothing else went wrong. "I vote we check out the Silent Maw first," Daehin said. "We came this far. Might as well see what the Voltash were so interested in. If it's nothing useful, we can set course for home after." The others agreed. They had survived this long by being curious and brave. No reason to stop now. Over the next 3 weeks, they prepared. Daehin checked all the weapon systems, making sure they worked properly. Ji-hoon created emergency medical kits. Nari ran detailed scans of the anomaly, trying to understand what they were approaching. Hana compiled all the Voltash knowledge about the Silent Maw into one accessible file. Quan regained his strength slowly. He spent hours in the engineering bay, fine-tuning the reactor, making sure everything ran smoothly. The work felt good. It gave him purpose. One evening, he found Hana in the Voltash burial chamber on Deck 14. She stood before the preservation pods, studying the alien bodies inside. The Voltash had been tall and thin, with long arms and large eyes. Their skin was pale gray, marked with darker patterns. They look peaceful, Hana said when she noticed Quan. Like they're just sleeping. In a way, they are. Ji-hoon says the preservation process is reversible, theoretically. But we don't know enough to try it safely. Would you, if you could? Wake them up? Quan thought about it. I don't know. Their species might be extinct now. Waking them up just to tell them that seems cruel. But maybe they'd want to know. Maybe they'd want a chance to see their ship working again, even in this simple way. They stood together in silence, honoring the dead. These aliens had kept the ship running long enough for the humans to wake. They had documented everything, hoping someone could succeed where they failed. In a way, the Voltash had saved them. We should do something for them, Hana said. A memorial. Something permanent? I'll help you plan it. 3 days before reaching the Silent Moor, they held a ceremony. They gathered in the burial chamber, all 5 humans together. Hana had researched Voltash funeral traditions. She read words in their language, phrases about honor and memory, and the continuation of knowledge. Quan had built a small monument from ship materials, a plaque engraved with Voltash symbols. It read, "To the crew of the Valkyries, you did not fail. We stand here because of you. Your legacy continues." They placed the monument in the burial chamber, where it would remain forever. Then they each spoke, sharing their thoughts about the Voltash and what their sacrifice meant. They were proud, Dayan said. Too proud, maybe. But they never gave up. That's worth respecting. They preserved knowledge, Ji-hoon added. Everything they learned, they documented. That gift saved our lives. They were people, Nari said quietly. Different from us, but still people. They loved and feared and hoped. We should remember that. When it was Quan's turn to speak, he chose his words carefully. The Voltash taught me something important. Being smart isn't enough. Being capable isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be willing to accept help. To admit you don't know everything. To use the simple solution instead of the perfect one. They couldn't do that, but we learned from their mistake. We're alive because we were willing to be practical instead of perfect. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Then they left the chamber, sealing it behind them. The dead would rest there, forever traveling through space on the ship. They couldn't save, but others could. The Silent Maw appeared on the sensors 2 days later. It was unlike anything they had seen. The collapsed star cluster created a region of twisted space, where gravity bent light into strange patterns. Stars seemed to spiral inward, their light stretched and distorted. It's beautiful, Nari said, studying the readings. And terrifying. The gravitational forces are immense. Are we safe at this distance? Dayan asked. Yes, the ship's shields can handle it. But I wouldn't recommend getting much closer. They scanned the area thoroughly. The anomaly was massive, spanning light years. And at its center, they found something impossible. A structure dotted floated in the twisted space, apparently unaffected by the gravitational forces that should have torn it apart. The structure was enormous, larger than any ship, built from materials that didn't match anything in their databases. It looked ancient and alien, far more advanced than even the Valkyries. That's what the Voltash were looking for, Hana said. That's the ancient technology. Can we get closer? Ji-hoon asked. Maybe, Nari said. But it's risky. The gravitational fields are unpredictable. They debated for hours. The structure might hold incredible technology, knowledge beyond human understanding. Answers to questions they didn't even know to ask. But approaching it could destroy the ship and kill them all in the end. They decided to observe from a safe distance. They were survivors, not heroes. They had already accomplished the impossible. Pushing their luck further seemed foolish. Besides, Quan said, we can tell humanity about this. Let them send a proper expedition. We've done enough. They spent a week studying the structure from afar, collecting all the data they could. Then, Nari plotted a course toward human space. 70 years at 0.3 light speed. A lifetime of travel, but they had time now. They had power, food, water, and air. The ship would carry them home. On their last day at the Silent Mall, something unexpected happened. A signal reached them. It was faint, garbled by the gravitational distortions, but unmistakable. A human signal. Using protocols from Earth.NAR, I traced it frantically. There's a human ship out there. Not close, but within communication range. They received our distress beacon. We've been sending a beacon? Dayan asked. I activated it 2 months ago, Nari admitted. I figured it couldn't hurt. I didn't think anyone would actually hear it. The signal continued. They responded, sending their identification and position. Hours passed. Then a reply came through. This is the exploration vessel New Dawn, Captain Minho speaking. We received your beacon. Are you in distress? Please confirm your status. The 5 humans looked at each other in shock. Then they started laughing and crying at the same time. Rescue. After everything, rescue was coming. Quan responded to the message. New Dawn, this is Quan, speaking for 5 human survivors aboard the alien vessel Valkyris. We are stable and safe. We have a lot to tell you. The New Dawn would reach them in 3 weeks. They weren't 70 years from home anymore. They weren't alone. Those final weeks passed quickly. They cleaned the ship, organized their data, prepared to transfer to the New Dawn. They also made sure the Valkyris would continue functioning. The ship might be studied by scientists, or it might continue traveling through space. Either way, they wanted it to survive. When the New Dawn appeared on their sensors, sleek and modern and human, Quan felt a strange sadness. He had come to love the Valkyris, this ancient alien ship that had become their home. Leaving it felt like abandoning a friend. We can visit, Hana said, reading his expression. They'll probably keep it in orbit somewhere. We can come back. It won't be the same. No, but nothing ever is. They transferred to the New Dawn with all their research and data. Captain Minho was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. She welcomed them aboard with food and warmth and humanity. You've been through hell, she said. But you made it. You should be proud. The New Dawn's medical staff examined them thoroughly. Their bodies showed signs of the ordeal, but they were healthy.